40 years ago today, Argentinian forces landed on the Falkland Islands, claiming them as their own and sparking an unexpected war with Britain, which lasted 74 days.
225 British servicemen lost their lives, as well as 3 Falkland civilians and 649 Argentinian troops. Steve Humphrey has been speaking to those who served in the Navy at that time.
Argentina has seized the British Falkland Islands, whose ownership she's been disputing with Britain for 2 centuries.
It was the news that stunned the world. After weeks of rising tension, Argentina's military dictatorship ordered the invasion of the Falklands. They celebrated in Buenos Aires.
Malvinas, Argentina, say the placards.
While the British public were surprised, Mrs Thatcher and her ministers were not.
Mrs Thatcher, do you have a statement to make to us on the Falkland Islands?
Several days before, intelligence reports said the invasion was imminent.
They said on this occasion, we think the Audis really do mean business, and we think that they will invade probably one of the lesser islands during the first week in April.
The Navy had some good fortune. 18 warships were already at sea, involved in an exercise based in Gibraltar. They were under the command of Admiral Sandy Woodward. A year before he died, we chatted about what had happened at his home in Bosham in West Sussex.
Sheer luck, I think. I mean, it just made us probably 10 days earlier down there than we otherwise would have been.
John Galway, a radar operator from Gosport, was on one of the ships in Sandy Woodward's task force. He and his friends on HMS Sheffield were looking forward to sailing back to Portsmouth after 6 months away from home.
As we're going along, there were news stories about scrap metal merchants landing on South George, and we're going, yeah, whatever. Once we got to Gibraltar and we were alongside, they just got a bit stronger and stronger, and you think, something's going to happen.
40 years ago, it wasn't just the ships being prepared for war. Also getting ready were Marines and soldiers.
Some of the men are expected to join the task force in Portsmouth tomorrow. Others have already gone.
Ring! Come on!
When the invasion took place, Sarah Jones was enjoying a family holiday in France.
We were away skiing, and it must have been on the news, I suppose.
Her husband, Lieutenant Colonel Herbert Jones, was commanding officer of the 2nd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, at the time based in Aldershot.
Needless to say, being a soldier and excited, they've always felt that they would definitely be needed, and sure enough, they were.
In the spring of 1982, Nick Williams was based in the Falklands.
The Falkland Islanders were extremely hospitable if you embraced them and their culture.
A corporal in the Royal Marines, Nick was looking forward to going home to Dorset after a year on the islands. His detachment of Marines had just been joined by the incoming team who were taking over. With little warning, plans were changed.
Our detachment was due to leave on April the 5th, and we were told that we were staying in the islands indefinitely. And we were allowed a 2-minute phone call to our families to tell them that we were staying. We didn't know when we were coming home. And don't worry, there's nothing happening. That was the brief.
In fact, Nick and his fellow Royal Marines were soon putting up fierce resistance against overwhelming opposition. Steve Humphrey, BBC News, Portsmouth.
Well, let's find out more with Vernon Steele, who is a corporal in the Falkland Islands Defence Force working alongside the Parachute Regiment. Vernon, very good morning to you. Just first of all, I just wonder where your thoughts are today. Someone, who was there when this was unfolding. What are your thoughts today?
Hi, good morning, Charlie and Naga. Yeah, it's quite something, really. It's a day we look back on with sensing the fear and trepidation of events as they unfolded.
Tell us a little bit, Vernon, about where you were when the invasion began.
I was posted up to our race course, which was about 300 or 400 yards away from where I'm sitting now, with one of my friends, we had the Islander, one of the island, or the only Islander aircraft stationed up on there well, the intention was to fly it off at daybreak to ensure that this was, you know, an event that was happening rather than sort of, you know, somebody's silly April Fool's joke. But I'm afraid events caught up with us before that happened. We first off heard the explosions and gunfire and what have you from Moody Brook area where the Royal Marines were stationed, but luckily enough there was nobody there, so there was no casualties at that stage of the game.
So you witnessed the Argentinian invasion, effectively, and then what happened to you? What was your experience?
Well, after that, we got a phone call from our HQ to say that we should stand down and surrender to any enemy forces that approached us, and as a result of that, we did. There was probably about 10 or 15 of their special forces were coming down from the west of us, obviously from Moody Brook and we surrendered to them. We were then taken down to Government House, where you've seen that famous picture of the Marines all sitting on the grass right outside of Government House. And we were on the road in front of them, and then we were escorted down the road back to our headquarters, you know, and kept there for probably about 2 or 3 hours or something like that, and then let to go home. So.
Vernon, can I ask you one other thought? I know that many people have said over the years, including veterans and families of veterans, that they consider themselves to have been forgotten very much. And a lot of people, and we've spoken to some, who were very damaged, PTSD, from their experiences and yet they came back and never effectively got the help they needed. Those must be stories you're very familiar with.
Yeah, very much so. You know, we were fortunate, really. I don't think that many people suffered outwardly from PTSD. Maybe, you know, it is a hidden disease. It's one of those things that you can feel it yourself, but people always put on a brave front.
Well, Vernon, I really appreciate you taking time for us. That's Vernon Steele, and Vernon was a former guide for some of the British forces, and you heard some of his experiences. Vernon, very good to talk to you. Sorry the line wasn't terribly good there for you, but you understand it was coming a long way, and it's good just to hear from someone who remembers the day, because you see the images, and it feels like a whole other time. Even those who remember, I remember it well. But it feels like such a different time, and then you hear the first-hand experience of someone who saw the military invasion itself.